Every legend has a beginning. For Prince, it started with humiliation, a music teacher telling him he would never amount to anything. What happened in the next 12 hours in a Minneapolis school basement became the first chapter of music's greatest untold story. November 1970. Lincoln Junior High School. A boy, a basement, and the birth of a sound that would conquer the world. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead in room 114, casting a sickly yellow glow across 32 students sitting in rigid rows. The smell of chalk dust and floor wax hung in the air. Outside, Minneapolis was settling into another brutal winter, the kind of cold that crept through window panes and made radiators work overtime. Prince Rogers Nelson sat in the third row, a center seat. He was small for 12, so small that his feet barely touched the floor when he sat in the standard-issue wooden chair. His clothes were hand-me-downs, slightly too big, carefully mended by his mother Mattie, burned with something that had nothing to do with his size or his circumstances. In his hands, he clutched 3 sheets of paper. Handwritten musical notation covered every inch, the notes packed so tightly they looked like a secret code. He'd been working on this arrangement for 2 weeks, staying up past midnight, humming melodies into the darkness of his bedroom while his parents fought downstairs. This was his chance. Mr. Henderson had announced that students could submit original arrangements for the winter concert. Prince had rewritten the school's tired rendition into something new, something with syncopated rhythms, unexpected chord progressions, a bridge that modulated through 3 different keys, something alive. His heart hammered against his ribs as Mr. Henderson began calling students forward one by one. Harold Henderson had taught music at Lincoln Junior High for 23 years. He was a tall man with gray temples, wire-rimmed glasses, and the permanent frown of someone who had stopped believing in surprises long ago. His classroom was a museum of mediocrity, faded posters of Beethoven and Bach, a piano that hadn't been tuned since 1962, and a conducting baton he wielded like a weapon. Henderson believed in rules, in tradition, in the idea that music had already been perfected by dead European men, and the best anyone could do was imitate them faithfully. He had no patience for innovation, no tolerance for students who colored outside the lines, and he had never liked Prince Nelson. The boy was too quiet, too intense. He asked questions that Henderson couldn't answer, questions about jazz chords and rhythm patterns that had no place in a junior high curriculum. Worse, Prince seemed to hear things in music that Henderson himself couldn't hear, as if the boy was tuned to a frequency that existed beyond normal perception. It made Henderson uncomfortable, and when Harold Henderson felt uncomfortable, he got mean. "Nelson!" Henderson's voice cracked through the classroom like a ruler against a desk. "You're next. Bring your submission." Prince stood up slowly, his papers trembling slightly in his grip. He walked to the front of the room, feeling every eye on his back. Someone snickered. He ignored it. He placed his arrangement on Henderson's desk and stepped back, waiting. Henderson picked up the pages with 2 fingers, as if they might be contaminated. His eyes scanned the notation. His frown deepened. "What is this?" "It's my arrangement, sir. I added some new harmonies and changed the rhythm to make it more what?" Henderson's voice was ice. "More interesting, sir." The word hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Henderson's face went from pale to red in 3 seconds. He stood up from his desk, and Prince felt the temperature in the room drop 10 degrees. "Interesting?" Henderson repeated, his voice rising. "You think you can improve on tradition? You think a 12-year-old child knows better than centuries of musical history?" The classroom had gone completely silent. Even the radiator seemed to stop hissing. 31 students watched as Mr. Henderson held up Prince's arrangement like evidence at a trial. "This," Henderson said, shaking the papers, "is not music. This is chaos. These chord progressions are wrong. This rhythm is impossible to conduct. And this," he jabbed his finger at the bridge section, "this modulation makes no musical sense whatsoever." Prince's voice came out smaller than he wanted it to. "But sir, if you just listen to it, I can play it for you on the piano and—" "Play it?" Henderson laughed. It was not a kind laugh. "You want to play this noise on my piano?" "Yes, sir. I think if you hear it, You'll understand what I was trying to. I understand perfectly, Mr. Nelson. Henderson walked around his desk, positioning himself directly in front of Prince. The height difference was almost comical, the tall, imposing teacher looming over the tiny boy. But there was nothing funny about the cruelty in Henderson's eyes. I understand that you are a child who doesn't know his place. I understand that you have confused arrogance with talent. And I understand that you will never, do you hear me? Never be a real musician. The words hit Prince like physical blows. Each one landed somewhere deep in his chest, in that place where children keep their most fragile dreams. You are too young, Henderson continued, his voice dripping with contempt. Too inexperienced. Too small. Music requires discipline, tradition, respect for the masters, not whatever this is. He crumpled Prince's arrangement into a ball. The sound of those papers being crushed was the loudest thing Prince had ever heard. But what Mr. Henderson didn't know, what no one in that classroom could possibly understand, was that he had just made the worst mistake of his career. Because some children break when you crush their dreams, and some children catch fire. Get out of my classroom, Henderson said, tossing the crumpled papers into the trash can beside his desk. Come back when you're ready to learn real music, if that day ever comes. Prince didn't cry. Not yet. He gathered what was left of his dignity, turned, and walked toward the door. His footsteps echoed in the silence. Behind him, he could hear whispers starting, the cruel music of children who had just witnessed someone else's humiliation. His hand was on the doorknob when Henderson delivered his final blow. And Mr. Nelson, don't bother coming to the winter concert. We don't need your kind of interesting ruining our program. Prince walked out without looking back. The hallway was empty. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, the same sickly yellow as the classroom. Prince made it exactly 14 steps before his legs gave out, and he slid down against the cold metal lockers. That's when the tears came. Prince sat on that hallway floor for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. The bell rang. Students flooded out of classrooms, stepping around him, over him, barely noticing the small boy crumpled against the lockers. He felt invisible, worthless. Every word Henderson had spoken played on repeat in his mind. Too young, too small, never be a real musician. Never, never, never. But beneath the pain, beneath the humiliation, something else was stirring. Something that felt like heat in his chest, spreading outward through his veins. Anger, not the explosive kind that makes you throw things or scream. Something quieter, something more dangerous. The kind of anger that builds empires and tears down walls. The kind that turns boys into legends. Prince wiped his face with his sleeve and stood up. His legs were shaky, but they held. He knew where he needed to go. The school basement. Lincoln Junior High had a room in its basement that most students didn't know existed. It was officially called Storage Room B, but it had become an unofficial graveyard for old. Instruments donated, pianos with sticky keys, guitars with missing strings, drum kits that no one had bothered to repair. The janitor, Mr. Williams, sometimes let Prince sneak down there during lunch to tinker with the abandoned equipment. Today, Prince wasn't going to tinker. He was going to create. Have you ever been told you couldn't do something? That you weren't good enough? Smart enough? Talented enough? What did you do with that pain? Did it break you, or did it build you? The stairs to the basement were concrete and cold. Each step echoed in the stairwell like a heartbeat. Prince pushed open the heavy metal door to Storage Room B and stepped into darkness. He found the light switch. A single bare bulb flickered to life, casting long shadows across the cluttered space. Dust motes danced in the air like tiny spirits. The room was exactly as he remembered it. An upright piano sat against the far wall. Its wood scratched and faded, but its keys still mostly functional. A drum kit occupied one corner, missing a cymbal but otherwise intact. 3 guitars hung on the wall, 2 acoustic, 1 electric alongside a bass that was missing its E string. To anyone else, this was junk, discarded, forgotten. To Prince, it was paradise. He walked to the piano first, running his fingers across the keys. The tone was slightly off, some notes bright, others dull, but it was playable. He sat down on the bench, which wobbled slightly under his weight, and placed his hands in position. A small, poor kid from the north side of Minneapolis, with hand-me-down clothes and impossible dreams. What made him think he could create anything worth hearing? The doubt crept in like cold water, filling his chest, making it hard to breathe. That's when he heard the footsteps on the stairs. Prince wasn't alone in that basement, and the person about to walk through that door would become the first witness to something that would change music forever. The door creaked open. A face appeared in the gap, dark skin, wide eyes, a familiar grin. "I knew I'd find you down here." Andre Simone, Prince's best friend since 3rd grade, the only person at Lincoln Junior High who understood him, who heard the same music in his head, who dreamed the same impossible dreams. Andre slipped through the door and closed it behind him. "I heard what happened. Henderson's a jerk, man. Everyone knows it." Prince didn't respond. His hands were still on the piano keys, frozen. "Prince?" Andre walked closer. "You okay?" He said, "I'd never be a real musician." The words came out flat, dead, like all the life had been drained from them. Andre was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled up an old wooden crate and sat down next to the piano bench. "You know what my mom always says?" Andre asked. "She says that people who tell you what you can't do are just people who are afraid of what you might become." Prince looked at his friend for the first time since he'd entered. "What if he's right, though? What if I'm just nothing?" Andre shook his head slowly. "I've heard you play, Prince." Andre shook. "He's right. I've heard the songs in your head, the ones you hum when you think no one's listening. You're not nothing. You're something Henderson doesn't even have a word for." The heat in Prince's chest flickered. The anger was still there, but now it was mixing with something else, something that felt like resolve. "I wrote something," Prince said quietly, "before Henderson tore it up. A new arrangement, but it was more than that. It was me. Everything I hear in my head, I put it on paper. So, write it again." Something shifted in Prince's eyes. Andre saw it, a flicker of light, where there had been only darkness. "You're right," Prince said slowly. "He can't take what's in here." He turned back to the piano. His fingers found the keys, and a melody began to emerge, tentative at first, then stronger. For the next hour, Andre watched in amazement as Prince moved from instrument to instrument like a man possessed. Piano first, laying down the harmonic foundation, then drums, working out a rhythm that was part funk, part rock, part something that didn't have a name yet. The basement had a small tape recorder. Prince found it on a dusty shelf and pressed record. "What are you doing?" Andre asked. "Making proof that Henderson is wrong." The music that poured out of Prince that night was unlike anything Andre had ever heard. It wasn't jazz, it wasn't rock, it wasn't R&B. It was all of those things, and none of them. Prince called it funk machine. He played every instrument himself, recording layer by layer, rewinding and overdubbing with technical intuition that seemed impossible for a 12-year-old. When he couldn't get the sound he wanted from the broken equipment, he improvised using his shoe as percussion, humming bass lines because the bass guitar was missing a string. "I've never seen anyone do what you're doing," Andre said. "It's like you're hearing a whole band in your head." "That's exactly what it is," Prince replied. "I've always heard it, all at once. I just never knew how to get it out before." But the night was far from over, and what would happen when the sun came up would prove that sometimes the best revenge isn't anger, it's excellence. By 4 a.m., Prince recorded the final version. When he played it back, even he had to admit it was something special, raw, rough around the edges, limited by primitive equipment, but underneath, something undeniable, a voice, a vision, a sound that didn't exist anywhere else. "That's it," Andre said. "That's you, Prince. That's who you are." Prince ejected the tape and held it like it was made of gold. "Now what?" Andre asked. Prince looked at his friend with eyes that had changed overnight, older, harder, more certain. "Now I show them." Prince looked at Andre. "What?" "Write it again. Better this time. Henderson can't tear up what's in your head, Prince. He can throw away paper, but he can't touch what's in here." Andre tapped his temple. "So write it again, and this time Don't show him. Show everyone else. The morning bell rang at 8:15 a.m. Prince hadn't slept. His clothes were wrinkled. His eyes were red. But there was something in his posture that made people step aside as he walked down the hallway. He went straight to the principal's office. Principal Margaret Chen waved him in immediately. "Mr. Nelson, you look like you haven't slept." "I haven't, ma'am." Prince set the tape recorder on her desk. "I need you to listen to something." She pressed play. For 4 minutes and 37 seconds, Principal Chen sat in complete silence. Her expression changed from polite attention to surprise to something like awe. When the song ended, she didn't speak for a long moment. "You made this?" she finally asked. "Last night, in the basement, after Mr. Henderson kicked me out of class and told me I'd never be a real musician." Principal Chen's eyes narrowed. She pressed a button on her intercom. "Mrs. Patterson, please ask Mr. Henderson to come to my office immediately." When Henderson walked in, he stopped dead at the sight of Prince. "Sit down, Harold." Principal Chen's voice left no room for argument. Henderson sat. "I'm going to play you something," the principal said. "Listen carefully." She pressed play again. Henderson's face went through several phases as the music played. Confusion first, then recognition. This wasn't anything he'd taught, anything he knew. By the second minute, his expression had shifted to fear. When the song ended, the office was silent. "Mr. Henderson," Principal Chen said slowly, "did you tell this student that he would never be a real musician?" Henderson's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. "Did you crumple up his work and ban him from the winter concert?" Henderson swallowed hard. "Yes, I did those things." Principal Chen nodded. "Mr. Nelson, please wait outside." Prince walked to the door, but before he left, he turned back to Henderson. The man who had seemed so powerful yesterday now looked small, diminished. "Mr. Henderson," Prince said quietly, "thank you." "For what?" "For telling me I couldn't, because that's when I decided I would." He walked out and closed the door. The greatest legends aren't born from praise, they're forged in rejection. Prince could have given up. Instead, he went to a basement and created proof of his genius. Share this story with someone who's been told they can't. Every no is just fuel for someone brave enough to prove them wrong. 20 minutes later, Principal Chen called Prince back in. Henderson was gone. Ratings: "You're not only welcome at the winter concert, I'd like you to perform your own composition." Prince nodded. "I'm willing." The winter concert came and went. Prince performed Funk Machine to a stunned auditorium. Andre Simone sat in the front row. Years later, he would tell interviewers, "That night in the basement, I watched Prince become Prince." Not the name, the force. 14 years after that basement night, Prince stood on stage at the American Music Awards, accepting his trophy for Favorite Soul, R&B Male Artist. The year was 1985. Purple Rain had conquered the world. When he stepped to the microphone, he said something that made Harold Henderson, now retired, choke on his coffee. "I want to thank my music teacher, Mr. Henderson. He told me I'd never be a real musician. That night, I wrote my first song. So thank you, Mr. Henderson. You gave me the greatest gift, the opportunity to prove you wrong." Henderson sent Prince a letter weeks later. "Dear Prince, I was wrong about you in every way a person can be wrong. You were simply too much for me to understand. I'm sorry. Harold Henderson." Prince kept that letter for the rest of his life. The tape recorder from that basement night was found in Prince's vault after his death in 2016. Engineers who digitized Funk Machine were amazed at a 12-year-old playing every instrument, inventing techniques that wouldn't become standard for another decade. Andre Simone still tells the story. "That night in the basement, I watched Prince become Prince. Not the name, the force. Something broke in him, and something else was born." Lincoln Junior High no longer exists. But before demolition, someone rescued the piano from Storage Room B. It now sits in the Minnesota History Museum with a plaque. On this piano, a 12-year-old boy wrote his first song after being told he would never be a musician. That boy was Prince Rogers Nelson. Because that's the real lesson. When someone tells you that you can't, you have a choice. Believe them or go to a basement and prove them wrong. One note at a time, one legend at a time. Prince made his choice in November 1970, and the world has never been the same.